All right, you've heard it. You've heard readers are leaders. When I was in school, there was the term reading is fundamental. You know it, I know it. Reading unlocks so much. And I enjoy reading so much that I actually have another YouTube channel where I review books. That information is in the show notes. It's called Read by Ed. But one thing that has been pressed upon me is to read. Some of you all know from a couple podcast episodes before, my grandfather he literally couldn't read and write. And so he always told us, y'all need to learn how to read. You need to learn how to read. You need to learn how to read. There's so much information in a book. Another term I heard when I was in school, someone said, if you want to hide anything from a black person, put it in a book. So that just really I was like, yo, that's crazy. And so what's happened in my life is I have enjoyed reading. Now, after I got out of college, like most of you all, I read so much in college. I was like, I'm not touching a book for a while, but it has picked up. And today's episode, we are going to talk about books that will help you in the role. And the reason why I bring this up is because when we had the player development conference, it just organically happened where every single or most of our presenters talked about some book that they read that helped them, in the role, or help them with their overall life, help them with different philosophies, things like that. And so Lauren King, shout out to Lauren King. She's like, hey, we got the BTF book club. So there's I'll have it in the newsletter, which you can check in the show notes, about 20 books from the conference. I'll put down the ones I know, and then I'll add them as I go back and listen to some of the conference. And if you want a replay of the 2024 Player Development Conference, the link is in the show notes. Replay of 2024 Player Development Conference. You do not want to miss all the gems that were shared. But I will go back and add those. But Dr. Lori Robinson, she dropped 15 books on her own, talking in one of the breakout sessions or the networking sessions that first night. And so I thought about it. I saw it. I just gave a review to my guy, Will Baggett, who has another book that's coming out, Hues of Hope, which I'll talk about later in the podcast. So Lauren King, who made up BTF Book Club, tagged me and said BTF Book Club. And I thought to myself, you know what? It's only right for me to share with you all who tune in so much. Hey, matter of fact, if you have listened to more than 5 player development podcast episodes, hit the like button. Matter of fact, if you listen to one, please hit the like button. If you haven't listened to any of this is your first one, please hit the subscribe button. And I said, I want to share with them what helped me in the role. So there's 2 things I will do though, because I was like, okay, these books helped me in the role, but I've read books since I have transitioned out of the role. So I'm going to share you books that helped me in the role, and I'm going to share with you a list of books that would help me if I was in the role today. And so this is, I think I got over here, my shoulder right there. You see the books. I want to say it's about 14, 15 books that'll help you. And so what basically I'm gonna do, I'm gonna grab the book and I'll just tell you why. The links will be in the show notes so you can get your copies. Hello. My name is Ed Jones II. I'm the founder of Beyond the Field Player Development. What we do is we help impactful people like yourself create player development plans. So if you're interested in creating a player development plan, please click the link in the show notes. And if you're like, player development, I've been watching this. What is player development? Player development is the enhancement of the athlete experience through holistic and intentional programming and initiatives. And so if you're in a space and you want to impact athletes and you're looking to create a plan, you don't know where to start, click the link in the show notes. We'll get going with you. All right, first book. The first book, and these are in no particular order. As you all can see, normally you see my books on the side. You see I've moved a lot of these books. I just picked them. Legacy. So Legacy is by James Kerr, is what the All Blacks can teach us about the business of life. The biggest thing I got out of this book, when I went to Baylor University, the head coach there wanted me to read this book. He said, hey, they do a great job. The All Blacks are like one of the most winningest rugby teams or sports teams overall in the world, but winningest in rugby there in New Zealand. And they have a big motto of person over player, taking care of the person. If you take care of the person, it will take care of the player. So it's a big time culture book. I really enjoy reading it. It has things in here like character, adapt, purpose, responsibility, learn, expectations, preparation, pressure, authenticity, sacrifice. It's so much. It's a really good book. A dive into their culture and how they actually, like you all watching player development, they actually care about the player first, and that helps with the on-field production. Yes. So that is Legacy by James Kerr. I think I'm gonna just toss these books on the ground. So if you hear that, it is what it is. The next one, Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand. Building a Story Brand. This one was a really good book for me. And it's Building a Story Brand, clarify your message so customers will listen. My friend Robert Ramirez put me through this workshop, and I was telling him what I did in player development. I was like, oh, I do this and I do this and I do this. Like a lot of you all are right now. You do so much, you can't give a sentence of what you do. That's why you need to sign up, click that link. Let's create a player development plan. But he was just like, man, you do all this. You need to learn how to communicate this. So we went through, he showed me this video from Donald Miller, and then I read this book. This book was so good because it helps you just clarify your message. And I was able to communicate with coaches, athletic directors, players, parents, community members. This is what we do in player development. A lot of stuff you hear, a lot of ways I help people is based off, some of it is based off this book right here, Building a Story Brand. Really, really good book for clarifying your message. And also, this is a good one too, when I do the second list of what I would read now if I was in a role for those students, NIL, your students doing NIL, help them clarify their message. All right, number 3, the Bible. This is Coach's Bible from FCA. Shout out to Fellowship Christian Athletes. And the Bible has so much in it. I mean, there's so much in it. My faith is in Christ, in Jesus Christ. And so this is a foundational, I don't want to call it a tool, but a foundational read for me to help me live the life that I want to live, to be more like Jesus Christ. And some of the things that I take out of the Bible, I think the biggest thing for me, there's two scriptures, and one's like a story. I don't want to paraphrase or be sacrilegious, but I'll tell you why. So the first verse that I used from the Bible that helped me in the role was Zechariah 4:10, and it says, "Do not despise small beginnings." So when you're in this role, everybody loves to see the picture with 60 student athletes doing community service, or 60 student athletes out doing externship or getting career shadowing, or 60 student athletes showing up to mental health programming, or 60 students showing up to whatever player development or athlete development programming one is doing. But it doesn't happen like that. And that verse always helped me to not despise the small beginnings. So if it's one person that shows up to programming, if I only had an opportunity to talk to one player, if I only see one player actually changing, it just reminded me, do not despise the small beginning. And the good thing I like about the second part of that verse is it says that the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. So God's telling me, like, don't worry about the small beginning because he delights in seeing the work begin. And that just meant so much to me, like, as I'm living missionally in life, creating generational impact, that the small beginning is the work. Like, it's the work. It's the joy in the work. That my Heavenly Father finds joy in the work. That's incredible. Don't despise small beginnings. It's something that I always kept, and it just has helped me big time because it's going to be days, y'all. It's going to be days in this role where it's not going to be super great and everything's going to go the way you want it to go. The second verse or story is a parable of the sower, which you can find in Matthew 13, where Jesus is telling a story about a farmer that goes out and sows on different land. And some of the ground doesn't take it. Some of it doesn't take the seed, and there's some that's fertile. And so when I used to teach, the hardest thing for me to understand is I wanted to save all my students. And an old school teacher told me, Jones, you're not going to save them all. There's going to be some that no matter what you do, you're not going to save them all. But just sow the seed, maybe later on it will fall on good ground. And so you all in the player development role, I wanted to impact every single one of my student athletes. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen that way. No matter what you do, no matter how many seeds you sow, no matter how much you tell them, no matter how many warnings you give, it just ain't gonna land on fertile ground. And so that just reminded me to keep sowing, because there are athletes, there are students that are in your program that it will, you will find fertile ground. And just a reminder, like, if I keep going and this person's not taking it, I keep sowing seeds, I'm missing out on the fertile ground. And this is not giving up on a player. This is saying, you know what, where you are right now, we have the services for you. I'm gonna be there for you, but I'm gonna intentionally put this seed that's gonna grow over here. Hopefully y'all understand that. Some of y'all may disagree with me on that, but unfortunately, everybody's not gonna get impacted by what you do. So those two verses kept me encouraged. All right, book number 4, At Your Best by Carey Nieuwhof. This was a book I read during fall camp, and it was a timely read. The subtitle is How to Get Time, Energy, and Priorities Working in Your Favor. I really, really enjoyed this book because it helped me see my schedule. So what he does is he calls it a thrive calendar, or basically like, hey, set your calendar up for when you are at your greatest, right? Green is when you're of high productivity. You know, yellow is when you're like medium productivity, and then red's like you're low. So for me, I'm a high productivity guy early in the morning. So early lifts or anything, people are like, Jones, why you got so much juice? I just naturally, I'm really, really good early in the morning. Yellow for me was about midday, 11 o'clock, lunch, 1 o'clock. I started to mellow down. And then after 5, it was just kind of like, all right, I'm here, you know? And so what he did is he says, if you know this, schedule things right. So I'm not going to have an important meeting with a player when I'm in the red in the evening, right? Because it is what it is. It's harder for me to lock in, whatever it may be. I'm gonna go green. So green was my creative time. Green was my, critical thinking time, my problem solving time. That's when I was really like, hey, if something happens, I'm gonna knock it out in the morning, right? If I got something in the evening, I say, you know what? If it's not an emergency, I'm gonna knock it out in the morning because my brain's gonna be more geared to get to solve it. Yellow was when I had a lot of meetings. So if people wanted to meet, this is when I'm kind of like, my brain's not super productive. I'm not really in the zone. So this is around 11 to 1:30. I would always meet with people. If people want to ask me about player development, or if academics wanted to meet or somebody else wanted to meet, I would get in that yellow zone. And then red was typically around practice, where I'm kind of down. And this doesn't mean my energy, this doesn't mean I'm sleepy. It's just I'm able to talk and watch practice. I'm more observant than I am early in the morning. So it kind of worked out. You got to know your times. This helped us as teams as well. So like, I knew the person I work with was opposite. So I was like, okay, what can I do now in my green zone early in the morning to help this person that I am going to work with on something that's really their green zone is after 5 o'clock. Okay, well, let me start making an agenda right now, or whatever it may be. So this is a good book that talks about how to get your time, energy, and priorities working in your favor. It'll be huge, huge, huge for you to understand this in your role. And then you'll be, honestly, after a while, I knew which coaches were what during what times, and it was incredible. Even athletes, I kind of could tell, all right, they're morning people, they're midday people, they're evening people, and it just helped. Good book there about productivity. Really, really like that. Helped me a lot. All right, book number 5, the legendary Hall of Fame coach, John Thompson. I Came as a Shadow. This book was big for me because if you know anything about John Thompson, he was not having it. You're going to do the right thing by him and for his players. Many of you all know, if you've watched or heard anything about Coach Thompson, just legendary coach, but an incredible program builder. He had high standards for his players. You're going to come there and graduate. So he was at Georgetown University, and his basketball team did not look like the student body. And so there were a lot of things that were said about his players. He stood in the gap for his players. He stood in the gap for other players, but he made sure that his players knew when you come here, you're going to take care of the thing. One of the great coaches, and when you think about athlete development, and for me personally, beyond the field or beyond the court or beyond competition, whatever it may be, one of the great pioneers from a coaching standpoint, you're going to get everything out of this school. Because this school's going to get everything out of you, so you're going to get everything out of it. One of the things he's known for is his walkout in protest of the NCAA Prop 48. And so I'll read a little bit here so you know a little more. So he walked out before the start of a game in the 80s. Georgetown was playing Boston College. It was in protest of the NCAA ruling. They denied athletic scholarships to freshmen who failed to qualify for athletic eligibility under the academic standards of Prop 48. Currently, such players can have scholarships but cannot play as freshmen. Here's a quote from Coach Thompson about this issue. I've done this because out of frustration, you're limited in your options of what you can do in response to something I felt was very wrong. Thompson said 2 hours before the game. This is my way of bringing attention to a rule a lot of people were not aware of, one which will affect a great many individuals. I did it to bring attention to the issues in hopes of getting NCAA members to take another look at what they've done, and if they feel it unjust, change the rule. He added, if these kids today don't get that opportunity at an education, who are they going to look to? Those people lingering outside the store? I had to reassure myself, if I was going to do the right thing, I'm sure now was the right time. So he did a lot of study on this book. Is really, really deep. Here's another note before I can move on to the next book. Reading this article. On Friday, NCAA officials said that the proposed legislation had been available for study for more than a month, but Thompson disagreed, saying few people knew the impact of what had been done. The NCAA officials said the legislation gave no consideration to racial implications, although it has been estimated that approximately 90% of the 600 students a year who will be affected are Black. So Coach Thompson stood in the gap, and you heard him say many individuals. So it wasn't just his players, but this is a great book, a great coach, and one of the pioneers of coaches. Coaches, you can be on the front lines of the athlete development movement. He knew that education was needed for his players, and not only his players, but just athletes around the world that would eventually come and play collegiate basketball. Just a great book, great read, great dive in. He ain't play. He did not play. All right, another book here. This is one my wife bought for me. It's called The Leadership Lessons of Jesus. This was my first book I had enrolled. So when I started at the University of Houston in 2016, my wife gave me this book as a gift. And she said, hey, you're a leader. This is a new area for you, but you are a leader. Don't ever forget that you're a leader. And so this book, I love it. It's a very kind of like devotional book. So it breaks down different verses. And I'm sorry, let me bring it over here. It breaks down different verses, and it gives you like 2 or 3 pages to kind of just, think about leadership. So this was a good book. Yeah, I appreciate you. Appreciate my sweetheart for getting this book for me. But Leadership Lessons of Jesus just helped me go every single day with a different way to lead. And it's really helped because I was able, in the role, you're going to lead not only the players, you can have an opportunity to lead coaches, staff, and other people in the athletic department. So you want to make sure that those leadership tools are sharp. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be number 7, I believe, because there's 6 books on the ground. Number 7, Atomic Habits. This has been probably the world's bestseller for the last 3 years. I heard a podcast with James Clear, and I bought this one in 2019 fall camp. Yes, with the Kansas Jayhawks. Purchased this book and read it throughout camp. And I mean, I don't know if you haven't read this book or heard this book. Hit the like button if you read this book. This book talks about like the different habits. So just little habits, how they can create an atomic change, right? So you can see it there with the little dots. A lot of us want to go, hey, I'm gonna do the big change tomorrow. But what this thing did was it says change your identity. And so what it said was, what is the people whoever you want to be like, what do they do? So for instance, during this time, I was like, you know what? I want to be organized. And what do people who are organized do? So what they do, they create agendas for meetings. And so what I did, I started with agenda. It might have been an email like, hey, here are the 3 things we're going to talk about. And so to get 1% better, I went from an email to putting it on a card. From putting it on a card, I made a PDF. I would always send it, here's the agenda. And so it just helped me as a professional, wherever it may be. If I want to be a better communicator in player development, what do those who communicate do? They study how they communicate. They stay on top of it. They're good with nonverbal communication, all different communications. But this book helped me big time. I need to reread it. This was a good one right here. But just the one step, I love, like he told a story about someone that said they wanted to be a reader. So what do they do? They would read 1 page a day. 1 page a day, read a page, put it down. And you think that's crazy, but as you keep doing that, it created so much change in a person's life that they became a voracious reader. So Atomic Habits is a good one. I'm pretty sure most of you all have read it or heard about it, but this is a legendary one right here. All right, last 2 books here. So this is book number, 1, 2, 3. This is book number 8. Book number 8, The No Complaining Rule. So in 2019, when I took over the job at KU, we had about 100 of these books just in storage. And because I was a player development guy, they were like, hey, Ed, you got to take all these books. And so I was like, these books are in my office. So one day I grabbed it. If you know John Gordon's books, they're very slim. So I grabbed the book and I was like, you know what? Let me read it. Let me see what it's about. And I read it during one trip and I was really just blown away by it. Of course, it's the no complaining rule. But what this helped me do is not only is like the book talks about the constant complaining. There it is. The constant or chronic complaining that some people do. We all know that person who just complains. What this book helped me do is create solutions. Like I was like, okay, so if there's a complaint, then the opposite of a complaint is a solution, right? Or maybe not the opposite, the byproduct, whatever word goes there. But if I have a complaint, I'm better heard if I have a solution, if a complaint needs to be made. So what this did was for me during that year, I just became, this is actually during COVID. I read this during COVID. I started creating solutions. So if someone was like, hey, this is happening. All right, cool. Here's a solution. This is happening. Here's a solution. And so it just made me a solution maker. And so this is a quick read. Read it on, I think we bused to, where did we go? I think we played Iowa State. I read it by the end of the trip. It's a 3-hour drive. So the book was done in 2 hours, but easy read, really good read. No complaining rule there. Helped me create solutions in the player development role. And the 9th book that helped me in the role is Crucial Conversations. This was a book that I heard about. I'd heard about it. I never read it. But when I got to Baylor in 2021, Marcus Sedbury and the now Corey Bolts were, they are like, you talk to them about crucial conversations, you would have thought they written a book. They had a session with our coaches about crucial conversations and just, just how people frame stories, how you can just communicate with people, right? So basically like the subtitle is Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. And so in the player development role, stakes are usually high. You got somebody running into your room. You don't have any background on what's happening. And the player's like, this will happen. I need your help. Or a coach is like, this is happening. Can we get a solution? And you're kind of like, what? Like, and so this book really helped me because it helped me when the stakes are high. It helped me, number one, to listen. I like to talk, but it helped me to listen. And it showed how much of a conversation is listening and then seeing from someone else's viewpoint. And so there's a lot of gems in this book. I need to reread this one as well. But it was just this was a good book. I actually downloaded one of the PDFs and had it in my room just as a reminder of like when people come in, like, here you go. All right, it's high stakes. Breathe. And so, yes, and here, actually right here, I love this chart right here, the 3 things that create crucial conversations. So the 3 things that create crucial conversations, let me make sure it gets clear there. Is it there? All right, perfect. So opposing opinions, high stakes, and I think strong emotions. Yes, opposing opinions, high stakes, and strong emotions. In the player development role, you will get all 3 of these a lot. A lot of strong emotions, a lot of opposing opinions, and definitely high stakes as you're serving other people's lives. So those are the 9 books that helped me in the role when I was in the player development role. All right, before I get to the books, before I get to the multiple books that would help me if I was in the role now, I want to let you know that I have a live player development workshop that will be coming to you soon. The link is in the show notes. Live workshop. Please go register. I cannot wait to see you there. We're going to walk through the process of creating a player development plan. When you leave, you will have a blueprint for a player development plan. All right, so here are the 8 books that would help me in the role right now. Number 1, Boss Moves by Myron Golden. And this book would be a book I would use for my students with NIL. Yes, this talks about business optimization. All right, so the biggest thing he talks about in here is something that would help student athletes that are NIL, entrepreneurship, whatever it may be. It says 4 boss moves: lead generation, lead conversion, customer ascension, and customer retention. So thinking about how you generate leads, the leads, people come to your website. Then how do you convert those leads into customers? Then how do you ascend your customers to new levels? And then how do you retain those customers with retention? This is a really, really good book, quick read. But if you have students that are in NIL space or students that want to be entrepreneurs, I would definitely have this book in my office and let players read it and go through it. All right, the next book. Speaking of NIL, okay, Your student athletes, YouTube secrets. I have used this for my YouTube channel, which I would say has been pretty successful, but this is a great breakdown by Sean Cannell and Benji Travis about YouTube. The one thing about YouTube, if you have students that are in the NIL space and they want to get going, YouTube is owned by Google. Google is a search engine. Google is the #1 search engine. YouTube is the #2 search engine. So with this title, with this book, let's talk about this video right here. The title's probably going to say books that help me in the role, right? Somebody one night is going to type, I need books that will help me in my role. Boom, they're going to see my face, right? So YouTube secrets, how do you get on YouTube? How do you make things happen? This book is just loaded with stuff that I've literally seen help me in my business and help me in my reach to help people in player development. So this will be a good book for your students that are on that NIL track looking to get more eyes on products or whatever they do. The next book, Donald Miller. I promise all of them won't be NIL books, but this is one of the best business books I've read. And so once again, maybe you have a student in NIL that wants to be a business, or I know people in the role that, you know, have their own side stuff. Hey, I ain't mad at you. Get it how you get it. But this is a good one, How to Grow Your Small Business. It's a six-step plan. And so for your athletes, once again, this breaks down the business side of it. Because what happens a lot of times is when I was at NIL, when it was starting, it was, hey, I got this skill, I'm getting this money, but how do I keep this money going? How do I save my money for taxes? They talk about the cash playbook in this book. So this is a great book for your NIL students, good book for your interns, anybody looking to create a business or has a small business. This would be a good read for them. All right, the next book is The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. This was purchased for me when I was at KU by Lauren Hawkins and Bree Williams for my birthday. Shout out to y'all. It took me a couple years to read it, but as you see it, it's a book on culture. And the thing that this would help me if I was in the role, it can help you in the role, is your player development department, it has to have its own culture inside the culture of the program. And so this talked about the different cultures, and one of the things I love the most is it talked about the secrets of highly successful groups. And the biggest thing with these groups that was kind of the common denominator is the aspect of open communication. So if you're in a role with players, listening to your players, your athletes, can help your culture. Just great stories of how people were able to not only open up and have this communication line, but they also created their own language in a way. So great culture book there. All right, next one, Range. This was recommended to me by Kevin Washington. And this book right here, it's Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. This book is awesome. It highlights people that do very, very well compared to those who are just like, I only do one thing or are specialized. And so it talked about, I think Roger Federer, it was Roger Federer, how he did not play tennis till he was like a teenager. He was playing soccer and other things, but all those other sports helped him as a tennis player. And so when you have athletes, you know, so many people want athletes just to be locked in on their sport. This book proves that you are better when you have range, when you could do a lot of different things. And so this is a book read. This is, for me, if I made a suggestion to coaches, this is a mandatory read for coaches, or would be a mandatory read for coaches, to see that not only do players have a lot that they can do, but coaches as well. Sometimes they get locked into their one identity. But it talks about how all those things come together and help, how people find success because they can take an analogy from, oh, so when I do this in this position, this reminds me of when I'm in my garden or when I'm making content or whatever it may be. It's a good book for range, good book for those who value versatility. Never Split the Difference. This is a really, really good book. This is a negotiation book. And when I first got it, I was like, what do I need a negotiation book for? You are always negotiating. I negotiate with my kids every night at bedtime. But this is a good book talking about never split the difference. It helps you learn how to communicate with people. When you're talking with players, they're negotiating. When you're talking with your coaches, they're negotiating time on the calendar. You're always negotiating, right? And so this talks about never splitting the difference, but it gives you tools to how to get that person to get on your side. The thing is, I want you to think that the thing I want to get done is your idea. And that is the basis of this. But it's really good. It really opened my eyes to how much negotiating we actually do in our lives. Winning the War in Your Mind. This is a good one by Craig Rochelle. Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. This was really, really good. And I really like this because, I mean, we know dealing so much with the mind, right? And there's just a war in our mind, right? Good ideas, bad ideas. We have these negative thoughts. It could be imposter syndrome. It could be whatever it needs to be. Our players deal with it, their past, their future as they get better, just the requirements, the expectations, whatever it may be. But this is a good book with a lot of good scientific and practical things to do to help win the war in your mind. And then last but not least, this is a book I just finished here recently. This is called Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. Once again, all the links for these books are in the show notes. They will be in the show notes. This is a book that I read, How to Do More of What Matters to You. And this book talks about productivity. And so we get into this grind and hustle culture and like, I got to do this and be super disciplined, which is fine. But this talked about how you can literally find productivity doing stuff you like to do. Like, I like to do this. This is where I find my productivity. So for instance, doing this book video right now, I'm being productive talking about things I like. I love books, right? But I'm also helping people, right? So instead of like saying, oh, here's this, I do it the way I like. Well, how would I help people? Instead of giving recommendations to people about books through messaging, whatever, I like to do it through video because I like video, I like talking. But anyway, it has a lot of good stuff in here. One thing it talks about is having a tracker as you do productivity. That has helped me big time. So you definitely need a tracker. And it talks about the, I don't want to call them alarming, but the astounding stats about nature, like even having a picture up of nature in your office. The studies between two different groups when they did studies was incredible. So get a plant, get something, get outside, but Feel Good Productivity. I really love it because once again, it helps you be productive doing the things you love to do. Well, there it is. I think that is, let me count. Oh, I have one more book for you. I do not have the book yet. It's coming, but Hues of Hope by Will Baggett. Will Baggett is incredible. You've heard me talk about him before. He's at the Player Development Conference. If you want to hear his talk, purchase the link or click the link to purchase all the videos. But he has a book called Hues of Hope, and it talks about coloring outside the lines. And I love it because what it has done is it gives people permission to do what they want to do, to create the impact they want to create, in a beautiful way that is like them. It's a story about coloring. You know, a lot of it is based off Will's life. He would color outside the lines and he was told you got to keep them in the lines, but he's like, no, this is beautiful. This is art as well. And so Hues of Hope is another book. The link is in the show notes. This book I literally read in one day, y'all. I said, I'm going to read this. Will sent it to me. I was like, all right, I'm going to read it in between the commercials while I'm watching the game. I just kept watching, I kept reading, and forgot I was watching the game because it just gave me that encouragement I need, that empowerment I need to continue to keep going. And then the last one, this is something I want to bring up because someone said, man, you give so much free content and it is so good and we are so thankful for it. And I've had people say, Jones, why do you give so much free content? Why are you doing this? Like, you're giving too much away. And I go back to the Bible. And in Proverbs 11:25, it says, he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. I hope that all this content refreshes you. I know when you all reach out to me, it refreshes me. I've enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Please go out and read. If you have any suggestions, please put them in the show notes. As I always say, go out and create generational impact. Don't wait, create that generational impact today. Let's read, y'all. Reading Rainbow. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 books, I believe. Somebody help me out with that. Thank you so much for being here. Check out this video that YouTube recommended for you and let me know if they got it right.